So glad you joined me today because there's two things in the world that I really like to talk about. One is chocolate and the other one is plants. And today I get to do both. So that's really exciting to me. Today we're going to talk about the plant that chocolate comes from. A lot of times people just walk into the chocolate comes from the grocery store, right? Doesn't come from a plant. Most people don't know that. If you know that, you're ahead of many, many people in the world. It comes from a tree. And here is a cacao tree that is cultivated. The name of the cacao tree is Theobroma cacao. And Theobroma means food of the gods. So aptly named, right? Excellent name. It's in the same plant family as it's called the mallow family. So things like okra, hibiscus, cola, all related to cacao. Why don't we grow cacao in Indiana or any place else in the United States? It's because it's a very picky tree. It's a tropical tree and it likes warm, humid conditions. It grows in the rainforest in what's called the understory. So it has trees that grow above it to shade it so it doesn't get direct sun. And it likes to have heat all year long. It likes lots of humidity and very little wind. Most of the chocolate that we eat comes from this tree, Theobroma cacao, but there are other trees in the same family that people are making chocolate-like things out of. So another one is Theobroma bicolor. If you were to go to Mexico, you may find something called bicolate, which looks like a chocolate bar, but is made with this tree, and it tastes a little bit different. If you were in Brazil, you may be able to find something called cupolate, which is made from Theobroma grandiflorum, related to cacao, would look like a chocolate bar, but tastes a little bit different. There's a few other Theobromas that have been used in chocolate as well. I haven't seen any of them out there today, but there are some bonbon makers that are using different Theobromas in their chocolate. So where does this plant come from? Native to South America. We think, my little pointer isn't working on the screen. So we think right here, this is Ecuador, Peru, Colombia. This is where it has the most genetic diversity, which is kind of a clue to us that that's where the plant started. But it didn't stay there. Ancient people transported it along the coast up to Mexico. And so you get cacao all the way here, kind of naturally growing. There are up to 41 species of Theobroma in this area. If you go north of Costa Rica, you only find two Theobromas growing in the wild, Theobroma cacao and Theobroma bicolor. The rest are only found wild in South America. But when the Europeans made contact with the New World, they got a taste for cacao and wanted more cacao, so they transported the plant all over the world. And now it grows in what is called the cacao belt. 20 degrees north or south of the equator is where cacao will happily grow. And you can see all along, you've kind of got this belt through the middle here where cacao will grow. Most of the world's cacao grows in West Africa, in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. That's changing. At one point in time, most of the world's cacao was grown in Brazil. Due to climate change, due to diseases, it changes where the percent amounts of cacao are coming from. We do have, if Madagascar, so off the coast of Africa, we have this little island of Madagascar. One of the chocolate makers out there today came all the way from Madagascar with Madagascar and cacao. So make sure you go out and find it. We also have a chocolate maker, cacao farmer from Liberia, that's part of Africa. So some interesting places they grow cacao. Now, if you can picture in your head, they grow apples and things like that here in Indiana, right? So if you can picture an apple orchard, you picture these nice trees all in a row, nicely lined up. You can drive the machines in between. Some cacao orchards are like that. This is one in Hawaii where you can see these are the cacao trees, nicely in a row. They're getting full sun. Remember I said cacao doesn't like that so much, it likes to be in the shade? These trees can sometimes get sunburnt, and I left the people in here so you could see how tall they are. The trees, not the people. The trees are about 10 to 12 feet. They keep them that low so that it's easy to harvest the pods. This is my friend Luchi in Peru, and she is sitting in front of a 100-year-old cacao tree. It's a wild cacao tree, it's 100 years old, and it's significantly larger than those other trees. I mean, look at the trunk size compared. And I want you to pay attention to these little bubbles here. We're going to talk about those a little bit later. Okay? So this is how the Western world has done it. In traditional cacao farming, they would do what's called agroforestry. So you would look at that farm and you wouldn't know it was a farm. You would just say that's jungle. But they've got cacao planted underneath. They've got bananas. They've got legume trees planted above. They've got mangoes and avocados all interspersed, not nice rows. Cacao doesn't really need to be in those nice rows because it can't be machine harvested. It all has to be done by hand. Okay, so the magic of cacao is that it almost comes from nothing. Literally, air and water is what the plant needs to make cacao. So we have our leaves. Each one of these little cells are photosynthesizing to produce sugars, which go on to make proteins and all of the components that go into cacao. Something different that the cacao tree does compared to what we might be used to in our area of the world is that when our trees go through a season of change, they go from green leaves to red leaves and then they drop. The cacao tree is an evergreen tree. It has leaves all year long, but it produces leaves after when the wet season starts, and it produces what's called a flush. So the new leaves, not the old leaves, the new leaves coming out, have this red flush to it. And let me go back a couple slides here. So see how this tree has the red leaves on the end? It's producing the new leaves for the year. Okay, and then we have the flower. When I tell you all of these steps, you're going to be amazed that we have chocolate at all. There's so many things that can go wrong before we get chocolate. So this teeny tiny flower is smaller than your thumbnail, and it's got male parts and female parts. So the pollen is underneath this petal that has like a little hood over it. And the female part, this is where the pollen needs to get to, is in the middle, guarded by this, what's called a staminode cage. So it's kind of got these spikes. That tells us that this flower does not necessarily want pollen to pollinate itself. It wants the pollen to go somewhere else. They're really tiny. What would you guess some pollinators might be of cacao? What do you know that are pollinators here? Bees, sure, maybe. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah, all the kind of pollinators that we know from around here. So this little part is problematic. It causes problems. Things that are big cannot get in there. They are pollinated by a biting midge. Biting midges are all over the world. So this is the flower. See the size of the flower? That's the midge. Teeny, tiny little insect that has the capability of crawling in under that hooded petal, picking up some pollen, and then going to the same flower or a different flower. The other thing that's different is that when you think about an apple tree or a peach tree, where do the flowers happen on those trees? At the end, right? At the end of the branches. That's entirely opposite for cacao. Cacao flowers and pods occur on the main trunk of the stem. And that's partially because look at the size of this fruit. Have you guys felt this? Have you held it? It's heavy. You want to feel it? No? It's heavy. If that was way out on the branches on the outside, those branches would just crack right off the tree. So it's got to be someplace where it's going to get the support it needs to hold onto the fruit. Okay, so here's our teeny tiny little flower. You can see the hooded petals right there. This is a bud before it opens. So remember, this is smaller than the size of my thumbnail. This part right here, the ovule and the ovules, these are what's going to become cacao seeds. This part of this tiny flower is what becomes that huge fruit that you just held. The baby pods are called chorales. You'll see all of these all over the tree as well. And that's what a tree, thank you, looks like when it's covered in cacao pods. So you can see why it needs to be on the trunk. That would just break the branches right off if it was on the end. So these pods take about 6 months to go from flower to pod. They are not left alone. So if you leave an apple on a tree, it will fall off. If you leave a peach on a tree, it will eventually fall off, right? Cacao pods do not do that. They do not fall off. The fruits do not break open. They will stay on the tree like that. We're not the only ones who like cacao. Monkeys, squirrels, rodents, in Hawaii, pigs, they like to eat cacao pods. Here's a cacao pod that has been feasted on by some animal. They will take the seeds, they will run off with them somewhere else, and they don't actually eat the seeds, they just suck off the pulp that is on the outside of the seeds. And then they spit the seeds out. And so what happens is in the wild, you will get these little groups of cacao trees. So where the monkey was eating his seeds, he just blip, 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 dropped them, and 5 cacao trees will grow there. And then the monkey will go somewhere else and eat his seeds, and you'll get these little groupings of cacao trees in the forest. Animals are not the only thing that can attack the cacao pods. There's some diseases that will also attack cacao pods. This one is called frosty pod, obvious reasons. It's a fungus. This one is black pod, also another fungus. Because cacao grow in very humid areas of the world, very easy, a nice environment for fungus to grow in as well. This one is called witch's broom. This is what it does to the branches. You can kind of see how it looks like a broom on the branch. This is what it does to the pods. It has these beautiful fungal fruiting bodies. They look great, but they're terrible. They literally destroyed the entire Brazilian cacao industry in the 1980s. And they are still coming back from witch's broom. That's still a problem in Brazil. But when you have the nice pods, they're gorgeous. You can get these rainbow pods, all different colors, all different shapes. They can be, the shape will sometimes tell us a little bit about the flavor, but not necessarily a whole lot. So you'll notice that some of these are rounder, some of them have a point, some of them are a little more bumpy than others. They tell us a little bit about genetics, about flavor, but not a whole lot. When we harvest them, it's all done by hand. You have to cut each pod off by hand. You generally open each pod by hand. And this is what it looks like on the inside. The seeds are covered by what's called a mucilaginous pulp. Delicious sounding term, but that's one of the things that I gave you. So that little orange thing that I handed you, that is made from cacao fruit pulp. So go ahead and taste that, and you'll get a kind of an idea of what cacao fruit pulp tastes like. What does it taste like? What can you relate that to? Yes. Chocolate? Does it taste like chocolate? Not at all. No. Yeah? So one of the reasons we think, or we speculate, we can never know for sure, that humans started to play around with the cacao fruit is that they wanted fermented cacao pulp. So the pulp, after a few days, really quickly actually, within 2 to 3 days, will start to break down and self-ferment. First it gets bubbly like a kombucha, and then it gets alcoholic the longer you leave it. Humans were always looking for stimulants. This is one of the reasons why we think that humans began to use the cacao fruit. Now, if we cut open what's inside here, we have this. This is the cacao seed. People will call it a bean, but technically not a bean because beans only come from the pea family, the legume family. So a cacao seed. Let's skip ahead. I'm going to come back to those. So here's what's on the inside of the seed. I hope you guys play with your food because I want to relate something to you. Okay, have you ever green peas, when you take it out of the pod and you play with it and it's got that little seed coat around the outside. If you break that seed coat open, it falls open into 2 halves. Have you guys ever done that? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, and then if you look really closely, this is your homework assignment to play with your food some more. If you look really closely, you'll see a teeny tiny little plant in there. Or if you think about a peanut, you know how a peanut has 2 halves, and then sometimes people say it has that Santa Claus or face. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, that is the tiny plant. That's where the plant is going to come from. Those 2 halves are called cotyledons. And that is what also is in the cacao plant, the cacao seed itself. So this is all cotyledon, and this is where the tiny little plant is going to come from. So I have 2 seeds here, very different looking. One is purple, one is white, and you can get all the rainbow colors in between that as well. The color tells us a little bit about what is inside of this seed. So color comes from compounds called anthocyanins and carotids. They are the buzzwords that you hear, antioxidants. So the more purple it is, you've probably heard nutritionists say this, eat foods with lots of color because they're the healthy ones, right? Same with cacao. So the more color, the more of those healthy antioxidants it has. The other thing, so you could open up your little cup. You've got 2 things in there. You've got a roasted cacao seed, and you've got what's called nibs. We'll talk about the seed first. You can eat this. It's safe to eat. You can taste it. It's been roasted, so it's gone beyond this stage. If you want to play with it, you can see if you can take, like a pea, you can take the seed coat off on the outside and break it open. It's a rather large seed. So if you have a garden, think about what you're planting in your garden. Or think about a tomato. So a tomato fruit has a tiny little seed. What else do you guys plant in your gardens?
Carrots.
Sorry?
Carrots.
Yeah, how big is a carrot seed? Yeah, it's just a little teeny tiny seed, right? This seed is so big because rainforest soil is notoriously poor. It cycles nutrients so fast because there's so many plants that it's really poor soil. So what is in this seed is a lot of fat. And we love fat. We love the cocoa butter fat that is in this seed. It's one of the things that appeal to us when we eat chocolate. But it's not there for us. It's there for the plant. Fat is a very high energy store. So there's a lot of energy stored in that seed to give it a chance to root, to find water, and get enough nutrients to pop out its first leaves so it can start photosynthesizing. So that's why it's such a big seed and it has so much fat in it, because the rainforest is a it seems like it would be a great place to grow, and it is a great place to grow once you've started growing. So getting rooted and all of that is a little bit difficult. So each pod has about 20 to 60 seeds. It takes about 40 pods to get a kilogram of cacao paste or chocolate. That's about one tree to get a kilogram. Here's what they look like when they start to sprout. So that little plant first sends down the roots. Everything needs water first. You can't survive without water. Roots get the water first, and then once they've grounded into the water, it will send up a shoot. So here, right here, these two are the cotyledons that I was talking about. While it's growing, it's sucking energy out of these cotyledons, and these will eventually like shrivel up, like they've been all used up. Everything, the life has been sucked out of them in order to get the plant. So you can see the tiny little plant coming up here. All right. So you all know how we got chocolate, right? Did you miss it? We are still not at chocolate. If you were to eat that raw bean, it tastes nothing like chocolate. As a matter of fact, I would guess most of you would spit it out. It's bitter, it doesn't taste good, it doesn't taste like chocolate at all. There are many more steps you have to go through to get it to taste like chocolate. Now that bean that you had was a roasted bean, so once they take it off the tree, some makers now, they'll put all those gooey beans in a bin and drain some of the liquid off. That's what they use to make the little gummy thing that you had, the cacao fruit pulp. Then, when they can't take all of the liquid off, they need some of that pulp still on there, they'll put them into what are called fermentation boxes. They will pack them in nice and tight, so there's no oxygen at first. They will cover them with banana leaves. This helps seed the yeasts that are needed for fermentation, and they'll leave them for 3 to 7 days to ferment. Halfway through, you need to introduce oxygen, so they'll stir it up, and the fermentation changes. Once the fermentation is done, after those 7 to 10 days, they'll dry them. Now remember where I told you where cacao grows? Humid, rainforest. You can't have a rainforest without rain. Really hard to dry things, okay? So it's a difficult process. You will see them drying on covered cement pads. The cement is really good at holding on to heat. Sometimes if it's just like a family backyard tree, they'll just throw the seeds out on the road because roads retain heat. You'll see that sometimes around. Some places they will have these giant drawers that are on wheels, and if it starts to rain, they wheel them back in under this covered area. So another challenge to making cocoa is drying them in such a humid place. And I showed you those fungal diseases before. Mold and fungus is always a concern when you are drying the beans as well. You need to keep air flowing around them. But we're not at chocolate yet. We're still got steps to go. Traditionally, they roast them over a fire. This is a clay kind of plate called a kamal. That's the step that you had the bean. So that's a roasted bean. Then what they do is take that outside seed coat off, and they will grind it up using a grinder. If you're in a factory, they have big machines that do this. Traditionally, they use something called a metate, which is volcanic stone. And it's kind of like a rolling pin where they go back and forth, back and forth. They'll add sugar here, usually not making bars, making some form of drink, like an atole or pinole, things like that. Not a chocolate yet. Next, we add sugar. We add anything else we want to add in. We have to melange it for a few days. Still not at chocolate. We have to temper then to make sure all the crystals are in the correct order so they line up nicely and don't melt in your hands, and then we mold. So many steps to get chocolate, and they all start with a plant. And that plant is just amazing, and whenever I talk about it, I'm always amazed that somehow, someone, somewhere figured out all of those steps. And the plant can get through pollination and flowering and pass the molds, and we get chocolate. So, ask me some questions.
The fermentation step was part of that, or from more of the ancient perspective, used in ceremony for cacao. Obviously, with being the thing of the gods, I'm just curious if it was used by shaman in ceremony because of the fermentation. They thought that was part of the sacredness of the plant.
So I'm going to separate the two things out. So I'm going to talk about fermentation and ceremony. So fermentation, drinking something fermented is safer than drinking, say, water out of a river. So if you are ancient people, drinking a fermented beverage is safer for you than drinking river water where all the animals are swimming and whatever else is happening in there. Also, it's a stimulant. Humans enjoy stimulants. We're always seeking out stimulant plants. As far as ceremony goes, there are some cultures like the Mayan culture where they do have the cacao is involved in their rituals. So even today, Mayans, farmers who are farming cacao will put cacao seeds in their pockets. Pregnant women carry cacao seeds in their pockets for luck. They will bless their cornfields, the corners, with cacao. They do a little ritual to bless for a good. Anciently, it was involved in marriage traditions. Yes, it was involved in ceremony. Was that the reason why it was first used? Probably not, but it did become part of the culture for certain people. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Chocolate we get in the grocery store, like a Hershey bar, how much of that is cacao, actually comes from?
So the chocolate you're getting here is great. This is really good chocolate. So legally, a Hershey bar has to have 15% cacao. That means 85% something else. That something else is sugar, fats, emulsifiers, things that make it run nicely through their factory tubes, that sort of thing. Hershey has proprietary secrets. They won't tell you what their percent is, but best guess is around 12% cacao. What we're seeing now is recently cacao had, because of climate change effects in West Africa, where most of the cacao is produced, their harvests dropped like really, really low. They had to reach into storage seeds that they had been holding for years. They have gone through all of that. And so makers are investing, large industries are investing in ways to find cacao substitutes. And we're now seeing that in England, where some bars have come out using substitute components for cacao. Now that's not new. In the early 1900s in the United States, when cacao was also expensive, makers used to put brick dust in. This is why we have food rules, so that we don't do that anymore. But yes, when cacao gets expensive, it's the one that comes out and other things go in. The other interesting part is the most expensive and valuable part of the cacao plant is cocoa butter. And that's because it's used in women's cosmetics. And so often they will substitute cocoa butter for some other fat. So they call it CBEs, or cocoa butter equivalents. So that's why your Hershey bar has a different mouthfeel than your Cadbury bar, than the bars that you're getting here. Different fats react in different ways. Lindt is a really good example. I'm sure you've all had a Lindt bonbon, right? You can imagine how that feels in your mouth, how creamy, melty kind of sensation. That's because they've substituted the cocoa butter for a different kind of fat. Cocoa butter has this magical property of melting at our body temperature. It's like this plant was like made for us. So it melts at our body temperature. Those other fats have a lower melting point, and so that's why they have a different feel in our mouth. That's why they melt in your hands.
What's surrounding the seeds? I mean, is that where they get the cocoa butter from? How do they get
The cocoa butter is in that purple part. It's in the cotyledons itself. So how they do that is after, also in your little thing you have a little broken up pieces. Those are called nibs. So when you take the bean and you break it apart, you get those nibs, and you can eat those as well. They will take the nibs and they will put them in a hydraulic press, and they will just press with huge amounts of pressure. The cocoa butter comes out, and you're left with what's called a cocoa press cake, which is what they grind up and turn into cocoa powder. So like your Hershey's cocoa powder that you bake with. Yeah. Yeah. Good questions. Any other questions? Yeah.
That fruit was very good. Is that ever sold anywhere here or in the store?
So those I got at Whole Foods. I don't know if there's a Whole Foods around here or not. But you have to be careful with those because they keep switching their formulation. And these are different than the last ones I had. They had a lot of banana in the last one. And as soon as you open the bag with the banana, it starts to oxidate. And so they all turned black and started to taste really weird. I think these are a little bit different. If I see them in the store and they're orange, they're good to go. If they're black, don't buy them. Sometimes you can see cacao pods for sale in Asian grocery stores. Not very often. It's expensive to import them. They have a lot of weight, expensive shipping. You can imagine that once you take that pod off the outside, the shipping costs go down dramatically due to the weight. So it's expensive to import them. They don't last long. They literally start fermenting the second after they're ripe. And so they're not like avocado, where you can leave it on your counter. You can pick it less than ripe and leave it on your counter, it will ripen. Cacao fruit won't do that. It will ferment and go bad very, very quickly. So it's not a great fruit to import. But if you ever are on vacation in a place that grows cacao, it's fun to go see a cacao tree and see what they're doing there and taste the pulp on the seed and taste the seed if you want. Yeah, good question. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for coming and letting me talk about plants and chocolate.
Acidic was the soil around the cacao tree.
How acidic? Depends. So you know the pollinators, the little midges? They really like to live in rotting plant material. So the farmers will leave the leaves on the ground around the tree. They will sometimes throw the pods that they've opened and let them rot around the tree. The little midges really like to grow in there. Depending on what they've put on the ground, the soil can change. There is a lot of, so I don't know if you've heard the makers out there talk about origins and cacao coming from different places, tasting different. That has to do a lot with what's in the soil. So the microorganisms that are in the soil, they will eat what the tree is producing and release things into the soil. So it's not really a matter of acidity or alkalinity in the soil. It's just kind of what is happening on top and in the roots with the microbes that will change it. I don't know that farmers aim to have a particular pH in soil. Their main concern is the pollinators, because if their tree doesn't get pollinated, they don't have cacao pods. Good question, though. Yeah.
Where did the bean that you passed around come from, or the one that the pod you passed around?
I believe this pod is from Ecuador. The bean that you had is from Peru. So the bean and the nibs were from Peru. I do not know where the cacao fruit pulp came from. That one is a mystery. Yep.
Species variations.
A lot, a lot. Like any plant that we as humans use, we tinker with it to get it where we want it to be. Before even the Mayans were tinkering with it, we speculate that maybe Theobroma cacao itself is a hybrid of ancient people tinkering with other Theobromas. So there is evidence of the Theobroma genus back 15 million years ago, but Theobroma cacao is only about 15,000 years old. So it may be the result, cacao itself, of humans tinkering, but now there's all kinds of cultivars. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of cultivars, mostly to prevent diseases. Disease is one of the big things. Disease and productivity are usually the two things that they're selecting for when they do selection. So yeah, like tomatoes, hundreds of different kinds. Anne out there has the heirloom cacao desk. If you haven't talked to her, they're doing genetic testing on plants to figure out where they may have been crossed or where they were in the past. So it's a really interesting field. And yeah, it's a lot of people working towards different things. Mars just actually announced that so right now, all cacao is non-GMO. There's no GMO cacao, it doesn't exist. Mars just announced that they're going to start using CRISPR to adjust the genes to get whatever characteristics they're looking for.
Karla, sorry, will you say that again for the video? I'm sorry. It's not an Instagram, didn't happen, all right? Sorry, I'm sorry, I gotta get Karla. Okay, sorry.
So no cacao right now is GMO, but Mars just announced they're going to start using CRISPR to genetically change the tree to get the characteristics that they desire for their production. So high productivity and disease resistance are probably high on their wish list. Oh, you guys are asking good questions. Good audience. Yeah.
Sorry to ask.
No, ask away.
In fact, I led my daughters astray on the way down here. We're talking about the origins of chocolate. And it was like, southern Mexico, Guatemalan area. And it seems like that's still the information that's out there in books and things that, I hadn't heard that Peru, or it doesn't seem like it's the correct history. What you said is pretty darn convincing.
Well,
It's made it, to talk about the northern South American
yeah.
origin.
Let's see if I can go back to that map. Oh, it's not going to let me.
I think the wrong information still, every time I see
So
something.
it's out there big time.
So it's not necessarily wrong information. It's that this is still very much being researched. So we're still learning. We didn't know the Mayan language until the late 1980s. We had not deciphered that at all. So there are some people that say there may be two centers of diversification, one here in South America and one here. So the Mayans would be on the Yucatan Peninsula there and down. So there is some possibility. There's a whole bunch of things that come into play. Genetics can give us some indication of where things come from. Written histories, like in the Mayan and the Aztec, they can give us some indication. There's also anthropological information where some people say that because the people down here in the rainforest have access to other stimulants like coca and cola and guanaba and all of these other plants, that they were just using the pulp, not the seeds. But up here in Mexico, they don't have access to those kind of plants. So that's where maybe they started using the seeds because they wanted to get the theobromine and the caffeine and the theophylline stimulants out of the seeds. So it's not that it's wrong information, it's just very much still developing. We don't know all the answers yet. We're still learning a lot about cacao. Yeah. So you're not necessarily leading them astray. You brought them here. You brought them to the Craft Chocolate Festival. You're giving them good chocolate. That's the best part. Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks for joining me. Thanks for letting me talk about plants and chocolate. I am on social media. If you're on socials, if you want to follow me, Opening Chocolate. I talk about plants on chocolate there too. So yeah, thanks for joining me.